Sometimes in life, horrible and unexplainable things happen. These things are a test of character. And I have character.
Children's author Roald Dahl excelled at creating very specific, eccentric stories in which children endure ridiculous trauma and hardships. I mean, in the film adaptation of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, we don't really know if those other kids are okay.
When they leave here, they'll be completely restored to their normal, terrible old selves.
Okay, we're just gonna take your word for it. In the book, Violet is permanently purple in the face, and Mike TV was put in a gum stretching machine and ended up being 10 feet tall. There's plenty of child abuse to go around in his stories, but they're a fun kind of child abuse. Like how James in James and the Giant Peach is treated like an indentured servant by his horrible aunts.
This is the only home you'll ever have.
No one else would tolerate a worthless little nothing like you.
Or how Luke in The Witches is turned into a mouse and almost murdered by dozens of angry witches trying to step on him. Not to mention the Grand High Witch in the film adaptation is just burned into my weak child mind. Thank you, Jim Henson, for creating this nightmare fuel.
Very long!
There's always real danger in a Roald Dahl story, which has arguably made his books stand the test of time. So when it came time for Danny DeVito to adapt Dahl's book Matilda, a story about a genius young girl who develops psychic powers, he knew he needed someone special to play the villain. Enter Pam Ferris.
Fresh meat.
A classically trained actress who understood the assignment through and through and gave an unmistakably outrageous performance as Miss Trunchbull.
If you can't handle the little brat, I'll lock her in the chokey!
I want to talk about Pam Ferris, who she is, and the collaboration it took to create this iconic character. But before we start gorging on this chocolate cake of a performance,
Now, eat it!
I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for supporting this channel, and a very special thank you to all of our patrons. If you would also like to help support us, we have tons of cool perks over on patreon.com/thebackfocus. Before being cast in Matilda, Pam Ferris had already been acting in film and television for over a decade. She definitely had certain types that she would play of all different classes, like a ruthless fashion designer in the series Connie.
Screw Hector, screw the business. You're in with me. Not the prodigal returned, but the evil stepsister.
The fragile, doting Mrs. White in a TV adaptation of Cluedo.
Something dreadful's happened.
What's the matter, Mrs. White?
That young man, he's dead. He's been murdered.
And a fun-loving matriarch of a large working-class family in The Darling Buds of May.
Well, I never.
Now, this is just a small sample size I took of her career, and it's already clear that she has no problem playing big, theatrical characters. The variety here is just already astonishing.
It was never there.
All right, Joan of Arc, thank you very much.
Shut up.
You shut up!
Then came time for Danny DeVito to cast his upcoming film, Matilda.
Action!
In a 2016 interview for Uprocks, he said, "For the Trunchbull, I put feelers out, looking everywhere. I saw wrestlers, potpourri of various scary, imposing figures and actresses. I put the feelers out in England, and one day I got a videotape from a woman who had done a lot of theater and a lot of TV, and a lot of great stuff, and that was Pam Ferris. She sent me an audition tape, which blew me away."
Are you a pig, Amanda?
No, Miss Trunchbull.
Do I allow pigs in my school?
My mommy thinks they're sweet.
Your mommy is a twit.
So before we get into the performance, let's look at the character. Agatha Trunchbull is the principal of Cruncham Hall Elementary, and she hates children.
I'll give you butt.
How she got this job remains a mystery, which is already funny. Miss Honey, one of the kind, gentle teachers at the school, is her niece.
Good to see you, Jen. Good, good, good. Time for one of our little heart-to-hearts?
The little background we get describes Trunchbull as a former athlete who had performed at the Olympics in 1972 in 3 categories:
Shot put, javelin, hammer throw.
It's also heavily implied, I don't even think it's implied, I think it's just downright said, that Trunchbull killed Miss Honey's father, Magnus, became Honey's guardian, and inherited a large fortune and a mansion. She apparently escaped justice and continues to do so as she brutally abuses children at the school.
Sit down, you squirming worm of vomit.
In the universe of the film, she gets away with it because no one would believe it.
Didn't you tell your parents?
They didn't believe me. Would your parents believe it?
So already this is a fun, dark, heightened universe that firmly establishes that the police or the press will never come to the rescue. It just raises the stakes completely. Now with that background, there were still some gaps to fill. Pam Ferris did her homework and elaborates in a 2016 article for RadioTimes.com. You see, my theory is that she was on steroids. This is not mentioned in the book or the screenplay, but I think if you're that obsessed about your own physique, you probably would get into steroids. And that her personal struggle is between steroid rage, my God, it amuses me, and trying to live a healthy life, which in her case means eating nothing but raw steak. And there's the other part of her, which is the bit that collapses and goes and eats half a chocolate cake because she can't keep up the raw steak. So she's constantly falling off her ideal wagon, which puts her into a steroid rage. That tracks. During this whole sequence in which Trunchbull's chasing Matilda and Miss Honey around her house, you get the clear impression that if she catches one of them, they will die.
Some rats are gonna die today.
Pam also went as far as to think about the Trunchbull's sexuality. I think she had a very funny feeling when she was standing next to one of the Russian wrestlers at the Olympics, but never quite knew what it was and never wanted to experience it again. So there might even be another layer of rage here that's a result of being a closeted gay woman. That's wild, and props to Mrs. Ferris for digging that deep.
Why are all these women married?
Also, it should be noted that Pam tried to go method Daniel Day-Lewis a little bit with this thing, just for the children. After discussing it with DeVito, they agreed that between takes, she should keep her distance from all the child actors and try to be unresponsive and cold. But apparently, this didn't last long.
It didn't work because we started having lunch together and they were so curious about what was underneath that makeup. They started investigating me and we got to be very good friends. In fact, it was very touching at the end when Trunchbull is suffering rather badly. Every time we did a take and I would be groaning and moaning, they'd all come up and give me a hug afterwards.
But like any film, this was a collaboration, and there were several other people heavily responsible for painting the Trunchbull as an effective antagonist. One such person was Ve Neill, a 3-time Oscar-winning makeup artist who had a crazy run in the 80s and 90s, working on films where makeup was crucial, like Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, and Mrs. Doubtfire. So when it came time for her to help transform Pam, a beautiful older woman in her late 40s, into the Trunchbull, she had her work cut out for her. So let's go to the book, which describes Trunchbull's face like this. Her face, I'm afraid, was neither a thing of beauty nor a joy forever. She had an obstinate chin, a cruel mouth, and small, arrogant eyes.
I put a lot of broken blood vessels. Sometimes you'll see somebody has a little vein on her face. Well, I drew in hundreds of those. And then I took kind of a coloring wand, like a mascara wand, and I colored in all the peach fuzz on her face, which gave her a little bit of a mustache and a little bit of a beard, and I darkened her eyebrows.
She even went as far as to create varicose veins on the back of Pam's legs, which are barely visible, but they're there. And her teeth are another story. According to Pam, we were going to have big top teeth all the way across, but in the course of extra teeth being fitted, I said I quite like it with only half in. So we left just the one side of extra teeth in, and it did a wonderfully cruel thing to my mouth.
Would little Brucey come up here, please?
But the pièce de résistance was a simple nose tip. It seems like such a small detail, but it changes her face completely, almost making her appearance more harsh and abrasive. And it also plays very well in silhouette, something DeVito made sure to feature several times.
Use the rod, beat the child. That's my motto.
And a special shout out to the set decorator, Jennifer Polito. There are so many fun little Easter egg character details just in the background of Trunchbull's office. I've never looked at this, but when you hit the pause button, I mean, you got Olympic trophies, boxing gloves, there's a photo of presumably her parents, a bizarre tribal mask, a gargoyle, a taxidermied vulture, and it's all kind of disorganized. And the house is great too. I mean, it's very clearly someone who inherited a home years ago and has just let it fall into disrepair. And piggybacking on what Pam said about her kind of trying to stick to a diet, not only is she eating half a chocolate cake, obviously, but there are pizza boxes everywhere. She clearly doesn't have a good relationship with food.
Much too good for children.
All that was left was certifiably insane person Danny DeVito to add his own Terry Gilliam-esque style to heighten everything. Extreme close-ups, wide-angle lenses, and some homages to monster movies. When I looked out of the window and I snorted, and the glass heated up, Danny was very keen that I snorted like a big Tyrannosaurus Rex. Not just that, but there's very clearly a bull snorting sound effect thrown in there. I mean, I'm assuming it's supposed to be a bull because when Trunchbull does a very obvious bull charge later in the film, you can hear the sound again. And finally, back to Pam herself. She did run into a few snags during shooting. There was a hospital visit from chalk dust getting in her eyes, and all the old food smeared in her hair and face. It just sat there for hours on a hot day. She couldn't touch any of it or it would ruin continuity. But despite all this, she had a great deal of fun and bid a sad farewell to the children of Cruncham Hall at the end of the shoot.
And I got to know them all very well. And we were very sad when we split up at the end of the shooting. And I hope to see some of them again sometime.
Well, it turns out she did. There's this really cute reunion they did for the Blu-ray in which the entire cast comes back and has this backyard tea party. And she plays around with the now-grown child actors. Look, she's trying to get the kid to eat his chocolate cupcake.
How can you be sure unless you eat all of it? Done, Cookie.
She's getting angry at the girl's pigtails.
Yes, I mean, are you a pig, Amanda?
No, Miss Trunchbull.
And the whole thing just looks like fun.
That is a promise.
And even going back to all the behind-the-scenes stuff on the DVD, it's just clear that the shoot went really well and everyone was respectful and kind to each other. It seems like Ferris and DeVito in particular, they just were really great with kids and kept a good, fun energy on set. And in the end, Pam Ferris looks back on her experience fondly. Miss Trunchbull is one of my favorite characters. The bully who had fear, who wasn't as strong as you'd think. I think everyone can relate to that.